The evidence is all around us, all around the world, and that's why I've made this series, because I want to show people that it's not just a single thing. There's a huge story here. And down below it, you drill deeper and you come to wells.
That's incredible.
In 1963, a man in Derinkuyu, Turkey, just wanted to fix up his basement. What he didn't expect was for his chickens to start disappearing through a crack in the wall. Without any noise or feathers left behind, they were just gone. Frustrated, he took a sledgehammer to the stone. Behind, it wasn't a crawl space or a broken foundation. It was a tunnel. A long, cold, silent tunnel that led deep underground. When local officials came to investigate, they didn't just find a passage. They uncovered something no one was prepared for: the entrance to a forgotten underground entity stretching hundreds of feet beneath the earth. And somehow, Google doesn't want you to see it.
There are huge cities. They look like ant farms on an enormous scale that are dug out under the earth. Hundreds and hundreds of rooms. That huge efforts was put into digging deep beneath the earth and creating these shelters. And archaeology does not have a good explanation about what they're there for, or why they were built, or when they were built.
When the Turkish authorities and archaeologists first stepped into the darkness beneath Derinkuyu, they expected a cave, maybe 2 or 3 rooms carved into the rock. But the deeper they went, the more it started to feel endless. The floor kept dropping, the passageways kept twisting, and one chamber after another revealed something that should not have been possible. What they had found wasn't a bunker, it was an entire underground city, 18 levels deep, more than 275 feet beneath the Earth's surface. The scale was shocking. There were sleeping quarters large enough for families, livestock stables carved neatly into stone, chapels, meeting halls, storage vaults, wine cellars, and even what looked like classroom spaces. This place wasn't just dug, it was designed.
The upper levels have more intricate stonework, and these were the first levels that would have been cut out.
This is a hypogea, it's a ritual centre. Clearly we can't give an age to it, but I reckon they were created during the Younger Dryas when there was clearly a mini ice age going on.
What amazed the experts most wasn't just the size, it was the precision. The ventilation system alone made them stop in awe. Thousands of narrow shafts snaked through the structure, silently pulling in fresh air to keep the whole place breathable. The airflow worked so well that even after centuries of abandonment, the air inside still felt clean. If you ever go there, standing inside it feels less like exploring ruins and more like walking through a ghost city that was never expected to be found.
These are a huge mystery. And the fact that objects have been dated to certain periods does not tell us when they were used. Every new culture that went in there would have removed most of the stuff that was in there before.
It didn't take long after Derinkuyu's discovery for the quiet murmurs to begin. Why wasn't this place more well known? Why hadn't earlier researchers found it? Or maybe they always knew about it, just kept it hidden from us. The answers were buried, not in stone, but in politics. For centuries, maps during the Ottoman Empire conveniently left Derinkuyu off the records. According to documentation uncovered in a 2016 investigative report by Anadolu Agency, the omission wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. Local officials feared what this place could attract if the wrong people found out. Looters, relic seekers, fanatics, or entire waves of pilgrims storming into the area chasing prophecy, gold, or hidden texts. The decision was simple: hide the city and preserve the peace. And in modern times, this pattern evolved even more. Locals began to notice that certain coordinates near Derinkuyu were oddly missing or blurred on Google Maps. Not all of them, but just enough to look intentional. Satellite imagery was patchy in areas that once showed entrances. A few of those access points were quietly sealed. There were no press releases, no signs, just blocked off overnight. But when a digital platform starts hiding what archaeology confirms is real, it stops feeling like preservation and starts to feel like quiet deletion. But what if Derinkuyu wasn't the only thing they wanted to hide? What if it was just the beginning of something much larger, something spread across the country, waiting to be noticed? After Derinkuyu was discovered, most people assumed it was one of a kind, a lucky find. But just 5 miles away, another mystery opened up, Kaimakli. It had the same narrow tunnels, the same multi-level layout, and its own living quarters, wineries, and escape chambers. And when researchers explored deeper, they found something even more mind-blowing, a long passageway that seemed to connect the two cities.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
The most remarkable places, and they can be visited. The two that I visited in the series are Derinkuyu and Kaimakli, and these two sites are joined by an 8-kilometer tunnel underground.
8 kilometers.
8 kilometers long, which joins the two of them.
Dug out of stone.
Dug out of stone, the whole thing.
Wow.
These underground spaces underneath each house were known to people, and they were using it for storage because it's quite cold. But what they didn't know is that they were all connected.
These weren't just isolated shelters, they were linked. Then came Oskanak, 35 miles north. This one had extra features, holes drilled into ceilings to pour boiling oil on intruders, a stone-based communication system between floors. Each site wasn't just a copy of the last. They were evolutions, upgrades, adaptations. In 2020, things got even stranger. While restoring the ancient district of Midyat in southeastern Turkey, construction workers accidentally unearthed another hidden city. It was nearly 3 times the size of Derinkuyu. Midyat stretched beneath homes, churches, and streets, covering such a wide area that archaeologists started calling it a lost capital. And it didn't stop there. A 2021 report by the Turkish Culture and Tourism Ministry revealed something few expected. Nearly every village in Cappadocia had some kind of underground chamber. A room, a hallway, a system. Not isolated discoveries, but the scattered remains of a nation built beneath the surface. But the more cities they uncovered, the more one question kept echoing louder than the rest. Who was behind all of this, and what was the reason for keeping all this buried in the sand?
When they date objects that they find in these underground cities, what are the dates they find?
The oldest, they actually have no idea. They were used by Christians, they were used by Muslims, they were used back in 2,000 plus years ago as homes in some cases. There's some evidence that they going back 2,800 years, but it's all from objects found inside them. And those objects don't tell us when the original work of cutting out these enormous structures, and it took an enormous will to create them. There's not just one, there's dozens of them.
A research paper titled Volcanic Rock Structures and the Limits of Radiometric Dating, published in 2011, breaks down why dating this material is practically impossible. Unlike bone or wood, the stone holds no organic fingerprint. That means the only thing researchers can do is date the things left behind, not the structure itself. And those remnants belong to everyone, except the original builders. But the timeline breaker was yet to come. In the hills of southeastern Turkey, just a few hundred miles from the underground cities of Cappadocia, archaeologists stumbled upon something that rewrote the story of civilization. It was 1994 when Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist, returned to a site previously dismissed as nothing more than a medieval cemetery. What he found buried beneath the soil was Göbekli Tepe, massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing over 50 tons, arranged in circular enclosures, and decorated with animals, symbols, and humanoid shapes.
You know what I'm fascinated by is that this stone, solid, but look, it's soft at the same time.
The shock wasn't just in the size or design, it was the date. Carbon analysis showed it was built around 10,000 BCE. That's over 7,000 years before Stonehenge, before writing, before agriculture, before cities were even supposed to exist.
We're now looking down one of the deep shafts that we find in Derinkuyu and in the other underground cities as well. 65 meters. So talking 200 foot down. You can't even see the bottom of it.
And later, in 2017, researchers Martin Sweatman and Dimitrios Sikritsis proposed something even more dramatic in Mediterranean archaeology and archaeometry. They believed Göbekli Tepe was more than a sanctuary, it was a memory. The carvings, they argued, told the story of the Younger Dryas event, a cataclysmic comet impact that triggered a sudden global freeze. If that's true, then maybe the underground cities weren't just clever hiding places. Maybe they were survival bunkers from a forgotten disaster. Imagine if this discovery, the comet, the freeze, the underground cities, wasn't just carved in stone, but also whispered across time in ancient texts.
Tarihi kaynaklar aslında buranın Asurlular döneminde M.Ö. 9. yüzyılda 2. Aşur-Nasirpal tarafından bu bölgenin ele geçirildiğini, hükmü altına alındığını anlatıyordu. Şu an mevcuttaki yerleşimler, mağara konutları 350 bin metrekarelik alan ve bu alan daha da büyüyebilir. Bundan dolayı biz şu an aslında belki dünyanın en büyük yeraltı şehrinde kazı.
Long before Christianity, Islam, or even Judaism, the people of ancient Persia followed a belief system that shaped how the world thought about good and evil. It was called Zoroastrianism, but beyond its spiritual teachings, it may have left behind something even more haunting, a warning. In one of its oldest texts, the Vendidad, a figure named Yima is warned by a divine being that a devastating winter is coming, a deep, deadly freeze that would wipe out all life. Yima is told not to build a boat. Instead, he's instructed to carve out an underground complex, a massive shelter where 2 of every animal, along with the best of humankind, could survive until the world above was livable again. This ancient story is more than myth. When you compare the description in the Vendidad, translated and analyzed in detail by Mary Boyce in her 2001 book Zoroastrians, Their Religious Beliefs and Practices, with what's been discovered in places like Derinkuyu, the overlap is eerie. Multi-level architecture, food storage, water sources, air ventilation, it's all there, down to the purpose of survival. The Zoroastrian text even mentions waiting out the disaster underground until it's safe to return. What makes it all more curious is how close Iran, where Zoroastrianism was born, is to Turkey's underground cities. They're neighbors, and oral traditions don't always follow borders. Which brings us back to the original question. Why did Google erase it? Once Derinkuyu became public, people noticed the location wasn't showing up clearly on digital maps. Some entrances were there, then gone. Aerial images that once displayed certain features were suddenly blurred or patchy. Local explorers who once walked freely into tunnels were met with locked gates and stone walls that hadn't been there before. Authorities claimed the closures were for preservation.
How long would it take to complete something like this?
Well, it would take a very long time indeed. That's all I can say. Nobody's really done the calculations, but
And that one shows a vent to the sky?
Yep, they have vents. They have vents to the sky to allow air to come in.
This wasn't the first time. Göbekli Tepe, before its excavation in the 90s, was written off as an unimportant hill, despite clear satellite irregularities. And now, it happened again. The pattern caught the attention of researchers. In the article Geofencing Sacred Sites, Tech, Tourism, and Erasure, they argued how digital platforms, either by government request or internal protocols, can intentionally limit what people see online. Not because the data isn't there, but because someone decides it shouldn't be. That leads to a more uncomfortable question. What exactly are we being protected from? Looters? Tourists? Or something else entirely? Like truths about ancient history that don't fit our timeline, or our textbooks, or maybe even our beliefs. It's one thing to hide a treasure. It's another to hide the past. And yet, while the world above debates what to conceal, the world below reminds us what was once possible. Thousands of years ago, before concrete, electricity, or climate-controlled homes, ancient people figured out how to build self-sustaining shelters deep underground. Places like Derinkuyu weren't just emergency bunkers. They created communities that could survive for months, maybe even years, without stepping outside. That kind of knowledge didn't come from panic. It came from preparation, from understanding the rhythms of nature and learning how to work with the earth instead of fighting against it. And it raises a strange thought. If they were able to engineer that kind of system so long ago, what else did they know that we've forgotten? We think of ourselves as the most advanced humans to ever live, but the deeper we dig, literally, the more that belief starts to crack.